All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something a little different this time. I'm betting you've all had those moments, those coming back home from an awesome trip, and it's not quite the same. You know that
Oh,
feeling.
yeah. Like you're almost missing the trip already, even though you just got back.
Exactly, and we're going to deep dive into that today. We'll call it the post-travel blues for now. And don't worry, we've got some good stuff lined up to help us figure this whole thing out. We've got advice from psychologists. We found some personal stories from other travelers. There are some really helpful tips from travel bloggers. And get this some research on what taking breaks does for us, like the science of it.
It really is fascinating how much we focus on the planning and the actual going on the trip and then kind of gloss over that coming back part.
Yeah, totally. And sometimes that can be, well, kind of tough, more than we expect. So, first things first, this post-travel blues thing. It's not just, it's a real thing. People call it different things,
Yeah.
post-vacation syndrome, post-holiday depression, you name it. But it's important to realize it's normal, you
Mhm.
know? Like, it's okay to feel this way.
It's definitely not something to feel bad about or like you're not appreciating the trip you just had. Actually, like the more we understand why it happens, the better we can deal with it. In fact, one theory is that it's all about an adrenaline crash.
Okay, I've heard that term before, but what does that actually mean, like, in this context?
Sure, so think about it. When you're traveling, everything is new, right? New sights, new sounds, different food, even pushing yourself out of your comfort zone a bit. And your body reacts to all of that excitement by releasing adrenaline. That's what keeps you going, feeling energized and ready for whatever comes next.
So basically, we're running on this, like, vacation high fueled by adrenaline.
Pretty much. But the catch is when you come back home and get back into your normal routine, that adrenaline rush just drops. Your body has to like readjust. And that can lead to, well, all sorts of different things.
So it's more than just feeling a little sad or missing those beaches.
You got it. A lot of times people just think of it as just feeling sad, but it can show up in all kinds of ways. You might be more irritable or have trouble concentrating, your sleep could be off, even have some aches and pains.
I was reading this one traveler's story,
Hmm.
and they talked about this feeling like they had changed so much on the trip, but then they came back and everything at home was the same. They called it like a reverse culture shock.
That reverse culture shock idea is a good way to put it. You've got this new perspective, maybe change some of your ideas about things, and then you're back in an environment that feels, well, kind of stuck.
Yeah.
And it can be hard to sit back in, makes sense.
Yeah, it's like you've grown out of your old self, but you're still trying to squeeze back into it. Has that ever happened to you after a trip?
I think most of us have felt something like that at some point. But it's important to remember those feelings are normal. It doesn't mean you shouldn't travel or enjoy it. It's just being aware of what might happen so you can deal with it better.
For sure. And before we get to the how to deal with it stuff, we should probably be clear that this post-travel thing isn't the same as like serious depression.
Right, that's a good point. Usually these post-trip feelings don't last too long, but it's always a good idea to pay attention to how strong they are and how long they stick around. If you're feeling really down for a long time, losing interest in things you used to enjoy, or noticing big changes in your sleep or appetite, that's when you might want to talk to a professional.
Yeah, sometimes those feelings can be a sign of something bigger that needs a little extra help. But for most of us, the kind of post-travel slump we're talking about is like temporary, right?
Yeah,
And there are things we can do to make it easier.
absolutely. And that's where those tips and advice we found come in. It's about like setting yourself up for success before and after your trips.
One thing that stood out to me was about being realistic, especially if you know there are going to be some stressful things waiting for you when you get back. It's kind of like accepting that, okay, the trip was amazing, but it's not going to magically fix everything.
Yeah, it's more about making things a little smoother when you get back. Another pre-trip tip that I thought was really useful was about your return date. Don't book that flight back the night before you have to go back to work. Give yourself an extra day or two to unpack, chill out, and just mentally get ready to shift gears.
That's actually really smart. It's like giving yourself permission to ease back into things instead of being thrown back in.
And while we're at it, why not do a little something to make coming home more pleasant? Like before you leave, take care of a few chores, maybe do some laundry, tidy up a bit, even stock the fridge with some healthy snacks. Trust me, it'll make a big difference when you walk back in the door.
Oh yeah, coming back to a clean and organized place sounds so much better than a pile of laundry and an empty fridge. It's like a little welcome home gift to yourself.
Exactly. And hey, How about planning something fun to look forward to when you get back? It doesn't have to be anything big. Maybe a movie night with friends, trying out a new recipe, or even just booking a massage. Having something on the calendar can help bridge that gap between vacation mode and real life.
I like that bridging the gap. One of our sources talked about incorporating little things from your trip into your daily life back home, almost like capturing some of that vacation magic.
I think that's a really nice way to think about it. Did you get into meditation or yoga on your trip? Maybe you found a new tea you loved?
Bringing those little pieces back into your routine can help you hold on to that feeling of peace and discovery. It's a reminder that you can create those moments of joy even in everyday life. I really like that idea.
And then, of course, there's the classic advice to get moving. It might sound obvious, but there's some cool science behind why exercise works so well for post-travel blues.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. What's the science behind it?
Well, when you exercise, your brain releases these things called endorphins. They're like natural mood boosters, and they help fight stress, make you feel happier, and can even ease those aches and pains.
So it's not just about shaking off that sluggish feeling. It's like giving your brain a chemical boost of happiness.
Exactly. And the best part is you don't have to become a marathon runner or anything. Even a walk in nature, a quick yoga session, or dancing around your living room can do the trick.
I think that's a good reminder for all of us. It doesn't have to be complicated or super intense. Just getting your body moving and feeling good can really help.
Totally agree. And speaking of feeling good, let's talk about the bigger picture of why taking vacations in general is so important. It's easy to get caught up in the everyday rush and forget about rest and rejuvenation.
I know, right? It's like we feel guilty for taking time off like it's a luxury or even selfish,
Yeah.
especially with all the pressure to be productive all the time. But there's actually a lot of evidence that taking breaks is super important for both our physical and mental health.
Exactly. Do you remember that Framingham heart study we talked about?
Yeah.
That study found that women who took a vacation less than once every 6 years were way more likely to have heart problems compared to women who went on vacation at least twice a year.
Whoa, that's a pretty big difference. It really shows that taking breaks isn't just a nice to have, it's crucial for our health.
It's a good reminder that taking care of ourselves is an investment, and when we're feeling good, we're able to show up better in all areas of our lives.
Speaking of showing up, we found some great tips for students heading back to school after a break. But you know what? A lot of those strategies could apply to anyone going back to a busy routine, whether it's work, school, or even just a packed social calendar.
Oh, absolutely. It's all about being mindful of how we transition back, setting realistic goals, and having a support system. And remember, we don't have to jump back into everything at once. Taking it slow can make the transition much smoother.
Before we move on, something I found really interesting was some of the perspectives we came across from cultures in Taiwan and China. It made me wonder if different cultures have different ways of experiencing and dealing with these post-travel blues.
That's a really interesting question. Do some cultures place more importance on resting and getting back into a routine after a trip? Do they have specific rituals or practices to help with that transition? It would be really cool to explore those different cultural viewpoints.
Yeah, just shows how much we can learn from each other about well-being.
Absolutely. It reminds us that there's no one-size-fits-all answer, and looking at things from different perspectives can help us find what works best for each of us.
I don't know about you, but I'm already feeling much more prepared to deal with those post-trip feelings. We're back and ready to keep exploring these post-travel blues. We've covered a lot of practical tips, but what about the mental side of things?
Oh, that's a huge part of it for sure. Our mindset can really make a difference in how those post-travel feelings hit us. Instead of just dwelling on the fact that the vacation's over, what if we thought of it as a starting point?
I like that. It's like changing, I miss my vacation, to how can I keep that vacation feeling going?
Exactly. Remember that feeling of freedom, being open to new things, that sense of adventure. That doesn't have to end when you get back home.
So even if we're not jet-setting off somewhere new, we can still have that adventurous spirit right here.
Absolutely. Think about it. Are there museums you've always wanted to check out but never got around to? What about that hiking trail everyone keeps talking about?
Or maybe it's finally trying that pottery class or that fusion restaurant downtown. It's like being a tourist in your own city.
I love that idea. And speaking of things you love, don't forget about all those amazing memories you made on your trip. Those photos, souvenirs, journal entries. They're more than just things.
I have to admit, sometimes those mementos end up in a drawer. It's almost like I don't want to look at them because it makes me feel A little sad.
I get it, but those little reminders can actually be really powerful. Think of them as connecting you back to all those good feelings you had on the trip. Don't be afraid to look at them, share the stories with your friends and family. Let those memories take you back.
Like little time capsules of happiness. And maybe when we're looking back at those memories, it's a good time to think about how travel might have changed us, even in small ways.
Totally. Did you pick up a new skill, learn something new about yourself or the world? Maybe even find a new passion. Maybe that cooking class in Tuscany made you want to try more recipes, or that backpacking trip made you feel more confident.
It's about noticing those good changes in ourselves and figuring out how to keep them going, even when we're back in our routine.
Exactly. It's not just copying what you did on vacation, it's more about being that best version of yourself that came out during the trip. That adventurous spirit, open-mindedness, that creative spark. How can you keep those alive?
That's really inspiring. It's like weaving those travel experiences into our everyday lives.
It really is. And that's something I hope you'll keep exploring even after this deep dive.
Oh, for sure. Before we move on, though, I want to touch on something we talked about earlier, that idea that vacations aren't just a splurge, they're an investment in our health. Those numbers from the Framingham Heart Study were pretty eye-opening.
Yeah, they really make you think. It's easy to tell ourselves, I can't afford a vacation right now, or I'm too busy. But taking breaks isn't just about indulging ourselves, it's taking care of our well-being, both now and in the future.
So next time you feel a little guilty about taking that vacation, remember you're actually doing something great for your health.
Exactly. Plus, when we come back from a relaxing break, we often find we can focus better, get more done, and are more into everything we do.
It's a win-win, taking care of ourselves and setting ourselves up for success. I don't know about you, but this whole conversation has been super helpful. I'm feeling much more ready to deal with those post-trip transitions.
Me too. It's amazing what a little knowledge and a shift in perspective can do.
We're not quite done yet, though. We have even more to share about how to make that travel magic a part of our everyday lives, so stick with us. We're back and ready for the final part of our post-travel blues deep dive. I'm feeling so much more prepared to deal with those post-trip feelings now. We've talked about the science, we've gone through some practical tips, and even talked about how our mindset plays a role. But now I'm wondering, how do we make that travel magic last even longer?
That's the big question, right? It's not just about handling the blues, it's about actually taking those amazing travel experiences and weaving them into our everyday lives.
So it's more than just looking at pictures and wishing we were back on that beach sipping cocktails.
Exactly. We need to go a little deeper. Remember that traveler's mindset we were talking about, that curiosity, that openness to new things? We don't have to lose that just because we're back home.
So we can keep that sense of adventure going, even without booking a plane ticket.
You got it. What about those museums in your own city that you've always meant to visit? Or that hiking trail you've heard about but never actually checked out?
Or maybe it's finally time to sign up for that pottery class or try that new fusion restaurant downtown. It's like being a tourist in your own city.
Exactly. And don't forget about all those incredible memories you made. Those photos, the souvenirs you brought back, and notes you jotted down. They're not just clutter.
I'll be honest, sometimes those things end up in a drawer. It's almost like I don't want to look at them because it'll make me miss the trip even more.
I understand, but those little reminders are powerful, you know? Think of them as a way to connect back to those amazing feelings you had on your trip. Look at them, share those stories with friends and family. Really let those memories bring you back.
Like little windows, back to those happy times. And maybe when we're thinking about those memories, it's also a good time to reflect on how traveling changed us, even in small ways.
Yes. Maybe you learned a new skill, or saw the world differently, or even discovered something you're really passionate about. Like maybe that cooking class in Tuscany inspired you to be more creative in the kitchen, or that backpacking trip you took alone made you more confident.
It's like noticing those positive changes in ourselves and then asking ourselves, how can I keep this going?
Exactly. It's not about doing the exact same things you did on vacation. It's about holding on to that best version of yourself, the one that really shined during your travels. Keep that adventurous spirit, that open mind, that spark of creativity alive.
Wow, that's a powerful thought. It's like taking the best parts of our travels and making them a part of who we are.
I really hope that's what you take away from this deep dive.
This has been such a helpful conversation. I'm leaving feeling so much more equipped to not only deal with those post-travel blues, but also use those experiences to grow in a positive way.
I'm glad to hear that. And as you plan your next adventure, I'll leave you with this. If traveling has the power to change us, how can we make each day, even the ordinary ones, feel a little more adventurous, a little more meaningful, a little more alive?
That's a beautiful thought to carry with us. Thank you for guiding us through this deep dive. And to everyone listening, remember, those post-travel blues don't last forever. But the memories, the lessons you learned, and the ways you grew will stay with you. So cherish those memories, use what you've learned to plan even more amazing trips, and most importantly, never stop exploring.